that programmatically if you like, a way to pick the quality or workflow as is appropriate for the type of content or quality you're seeking. Okay? So this is simply showing just what we saw before, but you can add various language pairs. And I've already talked about some of these slides, so skip that. This is just talking about the various reviews. You can create your own phase templates. Again, this is to save time as people, project managers are creating content, and most people that are doing significant volume do this via API. So they don't go through this sort of manual definition of what a project is. This gives you an idea of sort of the customization elements of phasing templates. And let me talk about some of this stuff. So say, for example, up front you wanted to machine translate, so empty pre-fills. Then there's a first post edit, and then the type at the end is there's three different models for translation. And if I'm not making sense, just let me know. But there's the concept of assigned. So if you look at the first type, there's assigned. The second type is community. And the fourth is self-assigned. So assigned is more of a traditional workflow where a project manager creates a project and says, I want Bill to do the translation, I want Judy to do the review, and it goes sort of in lockstep. Some of the things that are cool about a web-based platform like this is collaborative is that Bill can start translating one paragraph into a 10-page document. Judy can immediately come back and they can do it sort of lockstep going through. So it's not sort of waiting for Bill to finish to start. The other model is self-assigned. That's where you sort of publish content to a dashboard, and in a community translation model, you can say, I'm going to log in, maybe you get notified. You say, I'll take that, I'll sign that entire document to myself. So I'm going to choose what content I want to translate. So that's a self-assigned model. The third model is a community model. The community model is for lots of content. I mean, I hate to define what it's for, but this is how it's often used. Is that there's content that maybe you want translated, you're not sure who's going to do it, you're not sure how long it's going to take. People can participate on the same document, and that document may be a set of manuals, a set of marketing material, whatever the case may be, web pages, but it's chunked up. So there's ways for you to chunk the content. What I mean by chunking content is you can serve up 5 segments at a time. Still gives you context before and after, but as an administrator, you can say, there's a way to chunk content, deliver, lock 5 segments, so you're the community translator and you're translating that stuff. Somebody else may come in 2 seconds behind you, get the next chunk, and be translating that, so you can sort of leapfrog each other in the translation process. And sort of that swarm idea is what that's all about. So there's not just a community translation interface, there's also a community review interface. So after chunking content, swarming on the translation, you also have a way to crowd review it, where it's a voting mechanism, very similar to the paradigm demonstrated by Facebook, where you have a thumbs up or suggest an alternative. You're also presented the resources, the MT and the TM, to see what those resources show. Okay. So, shown and talked about everything here. The only difference is, here's that priority tag. So that becomes relevant. We've seen that issue. As dashboards start to have more community translation projects, it starts to get a little cluttered, and people want to, sort of help knowing what's relevant for people to translate. So what would the organization prefer to be translated first? Here's an active translation. Just that was the previous set was the actual creation. This is just the review of what it is, and you can look at the settings. And the left side has settings like the owners. You can add various project managers, what machine translation you want to turn on or off. What translation memories, in this case public, is in for the TM vault. There's no dictionary set. Community projects allows it to be seen by a larger community. PDF view so that the translators can see the full documents in PDF. And, you know, the sort of dashboard for completion, etc. Okay. This is a template model. Say a good example where you use this is, say, if you're pulling in XML and you don't want all the tags for some formatting things translated, some things are not necessarily content you want translated. You can define in template basis what you want to have translated, and it's a recurring format, or web page, or thing like that, or resource file. Content. This is just, again, delving even deeper into some of the definitions of how you want to define document. So that thing we were saying before is what's called the segment chooser, sort of a stupid name, but I think it says what it does. What segments you want to translate. And then you can say, I want to paste Google MT or whatever MT you have turned on into the document and go from there. And you have all these different phases. So the reason why there's all the phases have percentile completion rates is because they can all go on concurrently. So again, it doesn't wait for one to finish. You can have people doing content and language review at the same time. Another sort of difference with our software is that because it is all centralized translation memory, it's not just for organizations, but also across organizations, is that as people are translating, it goes to the TM database immediately. So people that are translating can leverage each other's work in real time. Okay. Practically speaking, it's about a 3 to 5 minute lag, but it's a near real time, I guess you could say. Some people talk about the quality issues, sort of pre-addressing some objections or concerns. The idea that what if community translation sucks, it's bad quality, somebody's screwing around, all these kinds of things. So you don't necessarily have to save those kinds of content immediately to sort of a permanent TM database. You can choose to segregate that TM for a period of time until it's been approved. So it might go into a saved TM vault separate. And then
how do you identify it?
So you define that in the project management. So you say, where do you want to save the TM to? And you say, holding community translation, holding pattern, whatever. And that's where the TM goes. Now, after that document has been approved, and through, as people iterate in the review process, it overwrites. So the only TM that is retained is the final review. Once that's locked, you can say, okay, I approve this, and then you can say, I want to merge that TM vault into the public TM vault or the permanent TM vault. That makes sense. Okay, so there's this concept of analyzing documents. So there's, you can click analyze. What it does is it sort of does a quick analysis of the TM database and the documents and says, okay, we're going to get, 12% exact matches, 9%, 100% matches, and all the different buckets of, 90 to 95, 85 to 90. So you can sort of see what kind of leverage you're getting on the TM. Now, you may choose to change the workflow after this, or you may say, right, I'm going to go forward with this and use it for pricing in a traditional world, but it just shows you what kind of leverage you're providing to the translators using the TM vault. So it does it on a, here's a review of a results page of analysis of exact match, 100%, repetitions, how many segments told there are, words, etc. So it's integrated in with the translator database, if you will, so you can sort of, very, very lightweight CRM type of thing. You can assign different people to be part of the project in more of that assigned model or invited model.